Welcome to Combat Theory Presents, a bi-weekly podcast about all things martial arts, fight science, and combat sports. I'm your host, Paul, the evil Professor Antonelli, and our latest episode starts right now. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Combat Theory Presents. I'm joined by someone I'm really excited to talk to. This is Rob from McDojo Life. Hey Rob, how are you?
Living the dream, brother.
Living the dream, man. Thanks so much for coming to the studio. Was it what you expected?
No, man, you got a cool little spot here, man. Like I told you before the show started, I'll do pretty much anybody's show, whoever asks. So I've been to people's some little tiny living room setups and like some bigger studios and stuff like that. You have a really good setup, man. You got the nice cloud thing going on in here. You got the cool art behind you. You know, you got all the combat night VIP stuff over here. I recognize that, and a whole bunch of the ambience is cool. I like it.
It's weird when you create a studio because especially with podcasts, there's no formula for like what that's supposed to look like, and there's some that were like all over the place. And originally this was going to be more like a lounge setting with like couches and I'm balling on a budget. So one of my buddies was like, I have a table, and I was like, what kind of table is it? He's like, oh, it's a wood table. And I'm like, oh, we can make that work. And then it just kind of evolved from there. So, Rob, typically the way we always start off with is how did you get involved in martial arts?
Well, I started when I was 12 years old. I was born with a cleft lip and palate, so I have scars on my face. And going through, school as a kid with scars on your face sucks. It just sucks. There's nothing fun about it. You're constantly getting picked on and teased and things like that. Elementary school wasn't terrible, but middle school was horrific. It felt like going to a prison every day. I wish that was an exaggeration, but like every day I went, I was just terrified because I knew I was going to get picked on, beat up, teased. It was going to not be a good day on any day. So it kind of came to a head in 8th grade. I was in a gym class, and as I was sitting there, I didn't have any friends in that particular class, and I really only had like 2 friends in the entire school. And a group of kids behind me hit me with what's called a bee stinger. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but it's basically you take a piece of paper and you fold it up into the shape of a V. And the more you fold it, the harder the tip of the paper becomes. Okay. And so you bend it and you put it in a rubber band and you snap it at somebody, and it kind of feels like getting hit with a paintball. It does not feel good.
All right.
And so I got hit in the back with one, and a knee-jerk reaction. I turn around, look at the group of kids, and I'm like, don't do that again. And then, of course, they were just looking for a reaction. Anyway, they all stood up, 5 or 6 of them, and they sat around me because I was sitting by myself. And then they just started picking on me, teasing me. And they said, well, what are you going to do about it if we do? Like, if we do mess with you again, if we do hit you again.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I guess I got to fight you. Like, I don't really have much of a choice.
Yeah.
And then they were like, okay, well, you can fight all of us after. I was like, all of you? That's stupid. So I went outside as soon as the bell rang, and as soon as the bell rang for that class to be over, they kicked the living dog crap out of me. I don't know how much cursing is allowed on here,
you can
but
curse
okay.
Like.
Well, they kicked the shit out.
Nothing crazy. You know what I mean? Like
because sometimes there's no substitute for certain words, and that time they didn't kick the crap out of me. They kicked the shit out of me. So they stepped on my face. I had glasses at the time as well, so they cut my face up pretty bad. One kid tried to stab me with a pencil, and I actually still have pencil lead in my finger today that you can still see from when I got stabbed. If it's not the lead itself, it's definitely at least a reminder every day that I got stabbed. So I put my hand up, got stabbed in the hand, and I was like, damn, luckily the pencil broke, so I didn't get stabbed again. 2 teachers watched the entire thing happen. They did nothing about it. They literally just stood there and they watched me get beaten for 5 minutes.
It feels like middle school and prison have a lot of similarities.
A lot. You check in every day. Their warden makes sure everything's going well.
There's no one improves. Like
you're just doing your time, man. Everybody's just trying to get through. None of that's going to matter. You're just trying to be there and leave.
But, I mean, I have so many students that are in middle school that have such similar stories, and I'm just like, listen, man, just get through it, dude. Just do your time and get out, because like middle school sucks for everybody. And if you're anyone that's slightly outside of the norm, even if that norm is like a positive, like you're smarter than everyone else, or you're taller than everyone else, or anything crazy that they can find a way to isolate and like terrorize you with their improvised weapons. I mean, it's prison basically, but
for sure,
but middle school.
Yeah. But they beat me for 5 minutes, and the only reason I knew it was 5 minutes is because they beat me from bell to bell, which between classes is a 5-minute spread. And if you've ever been in a real fight, you understand that 5 minutes is a long time
From bell to bell.
And so I got beat up pretty bad, and after the second bell rang, they all scattered. Again, the two teachers did nothing. They literally just watched this happen to me.
Yeah.
A friend of mine who was late to the class ran up after the bell rang because he was late, so he wasn't there on time to help. But one of the only friends I had in school walked up, picked me up, helped me to the nurse's office. He handed me a card. That card was for trial karate class, and he said, "You need this."
Yeah.
And I asked my mom, and she gave it to me as a birthday present, which happened to be that next month. Paid in full for the year, and now it's been 25 years.
Awesome. That's super exciting. What style of karate was that?
It's freestyle karate, so
Okay.
It was a little bit more like kickboxing.
A little more aggressive.
So more like Benny the Jet Urquidez or Joe Louis style kickboxing. Not really. We never did katas or anything. Everything was geared towards sparring.
So karate for a long time.
Yes.
Have you done other martial arts?
Yeah, to just kick off the resume, which I'm used to answering live, so I answer quickly. So I've been in the industry for 25 years as of April 12th. I am a third-degree black belt in karate, a third-degree black belt in something called Lisajodo, which is a weapon system not many have heard of.
Okay.
Basically just means I'm good at nunchucks.
Yeah.
Which is a fairly useless skill. Nobody sits by the
You don't carry nunchucks
Yeah,
around,
nobody
no.
sits by that dude on the bus, man. You're like chilling nunchucks. People avoid that guy, You don't hang out with that guy on the subway,
I probably would. I'd be like, yo, man, what's up with the chucks? What's going on here?
Yeah, usually it's a crackhead who attacks you with them. But,
Yeah.
and then I'm a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've been doing that now for 9 years.
All right.
6-0 amateur boxer, 4-2 amateur kickboxer. I was on an international kickboxing team for 2 years called Team Full Circle, which was one of the only kickboxing teams at the time that was really helping anything financially on the circuit that I was in.
Sure.
Because at the time, if you were sponsored, that just basically meant they gave you gear.
You got some clothes or something.
You had to pay everything.
The clothes wasn't paying the bills. Yeah.
No, it does not. And so, so I did that. I never really added up all those matches because they were tournament style. So who cares? Hundreds. And then I ran a martial arts school for 4 years. Been doing martial arts business consulting now for a decade, and almost McDojo Life for a decade.
So, okay, that's a good segue. What? Tell us about McDojo Life. I think most people that are listening probably know what that is, but could you kind of give us just a real basic rundown of what you do there?
Yeah, for sure. The mission statement's very simple. I call out fakes, frauds, phonies, con men, and pedophiles in the martial arts industry, and I do it because I want to keep martial arts legitimate.
Okay. And I take it that people don't take that very well when you're calling them out.
I don't care. I don't care. If I called you out for a reason.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example of one time someone really hated that I called them out. So there's a guy, his name's Edon Abelnick. Edon Abelnick runs a thing called the Kala system, which is it is just Krav Maga.
Okay.
But he hates Krav Maga, even though he taught Krav Maga forever. So he started his own system, which is Krav Maga, and he just says it's not.
Yeah.
But it is. It's a weird thing with the ego in the martial arts industry. So he actually shot a student doing gun disarms with live ammunition.
Okay.
We all laugh. Immediately laugh, right?
All right.
And then so when he did that, though, you would think, okay, this guy learned his lesson.
I really messed up.
Yeah,
I made a terrible mistake.
And he admits to doing this. So, and then you would think, okay, he learned his lesson. He didn't. There are videos well after the documented case of him shooting a student, continuing to do gun disarms on gun ranges with loaded ammunition or with a loaded firearm.
Yeah.
And so then you would think, okay, well, that's got to be the worst thing this guy could possibly do. Nope. So then he set up multiple seminars around the world, and at least 3 of those seminars, these are just the 3 I can prove, but at least 3 of those seminars, he required everyone in those seminars to pay in full up front. We're talking multiple day seminars, so It's not just one. And he just didn't show up. And so when he didn't show up, the first thing you would probably do as a student is go, I would like a refund.
I need my money back for this.
He acknowledged that people have asked him for refunds, and he refuses to give them refunds. That constitutes as fraud. You would think, okay, well, it can't get any worse than that. No, well, it turns out in South Africa that being negligent with a firearm is illegal. Not like here in the United States, if I take a firearm that's, I show it's clear and I start pointing it at people, it's uncouth, it's not smart, but it's not illegal.
Yeah.
Especially on a gun range, people will get on you about that, but you're not going to go to jail for that. In South Africa, apparently you will. So this dude, those viral videos went around and he got kicked off a gun range. Well, this guy's clientele are so culty, which is why I call it a cult, that one of his members actually went into that particular gun range in South Africa with a loaded rifle and was having an argument with the gentleman who owned it. You can't just walk into the lobby of a gun range with a loaded gun. It's not a smart thing.
No.
And so he started threatening the guy at the front. And, after I put out a video about that guy, I start getting all the heat from his minions and stuff like that, which I knew would happen because what these people do.
Yeah.
And he threatened to sue me 3 times. And each time it got from, like, I think I'm going to sue you, to I'm probably now going to sue you, to I am going to sue you. And that was like 8 months ago and still nothing.
No, not yet. Well,
because he can't sue me for anything. But that goes because everything I said
is legitimate
by his own words.
Do you remember what was the thought process that led you to creating McDojo Life?
Yeah, it was a conversation. It really was. Yeah. I was what you would call a program director at a jiu-jitsu academy.
Sure.
So I was their striking coach, and I was a program director, and I helped with kids' classes.
Sure.
I think I was a 4-stripe blue belt at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go in. I'm going to start doing my paperwork for the morning. I get a phone call from the boss. Boss says, "Hey, man, I'm not feeling very well," which he never does. So I know he was sick. Could you do me a favor and take over the class today? I was like, sure. So we taught arm bar, triangle choke, transition to both, and then spar. And I was like, all right, cool, easy. Then it was a noon class, so most of those guys didn't work, or they worked for themselves, so they had a lot of extra free time. So we're all shooting the shit. We're chit-chatting, having a conversation about random things here and there. And the subject of McDojos came up. And while we're talking about that, there was a guy there, and it was only his second class ever in any martial art. So everybody leaves after that conversation, and then I'm about to lock up and leave for the day and come back in the evening when the dude pulls me to the side and he goes, "Hey, man, I'm a little embarrassed, but what's a McDojo?" And I go, "Oh."
Right.
I was like, "Oh, well, I apologize. I didn't think during the conversation to like go over the top to include. I just thought it was a common term."
Common term, yeah.
And so I explained to him what have kind of become the basis 5 rules of the page. And he asked me one question. He said, "Why doesn't anybody do anything about that?" And I thought, it's a good question. At that time, I'd been doing this for well over a decade.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there thinking about it, and I was like, why doesn't anybody do anything about that? And the truth is that there is no regulating body to martial arts.
Yeah.
Anybody can open up a martial arts school if they just want to. You don't have to have any qualifications, no background checks, nothing. Just open a school. Make it up.
So I think that would lead me to my first question that I ask people a lot. How do I know what I'm learning is legitimate?
The easiest answer is, what's your goal?
Okay. So if I'm someone that is looking to learn self-defense, how do I go? Where do I go into a school and know that this is I'm learning something legitimate versus this is not legitimate?
Well, step 1 is ask the basic questions. So you would ask what you would ask of any person. You would try to find out their qualifications. Now, a lot of times with any other business, you'd be able to look at that business and know immediately based off their professionalism how good they would probably be. If you go into a tire shop and there are tires scattered everywhere and it's dirty and you have a hard time communicating with anybody who works there and they're not being attentive to your needs or wants and they're just kind of ignoring you, you would go, "Oh, this is a crap hole." You'd probably leave.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we do that with martial arts? Why is our standards different?
Yeah.
People go, "It's dirty. It smells in here. It's gross. People are threatening, looking at me. This guy's wrapping his hands. The coach is ignoring me for 30 minutes. This is the gym for me." That's the weird, messed up thought process in martial arts.
I have had that conversation. We're like, "Oh, this place is hardcore."
But what people fail to forget is how you do anything is how you do everything. So if they're not taking care of their gym and it's dirty, all right, well, what you just forgot is staph infection is very easy to get into a martial arts school. So you're happy to get a staph infection?
Yeah.
Well, no, man, my cousin told me the hardcore gyms are like this. No, this is a weird impression that people get because of media and also perpetuated by people who have absolutely no idea what they're doing in terms of running a legitimate business.
Yeah.
And so people think that by getting beat up all the time and going home with injuries, that's a good thing. They're getting tough. No, you're being abused. They think that by going into a gym and being treated like dirt, that it's making them mentally tough. No, you're being abused. Like a good coach, if you go into a Jackson Winklejohn, for instance, and you just observe, which you can do. You can go in, go to the second floor, look down upon their classes, and just watch if you want to. You'll notice that they are going to be hard on those guys. They're going to make them work, but you'll notice they'll treat the guys who are there for professional fighting, amateur fighting, or to be there who live in-house much differently than their day-to-day classes. For instance, the classes that they do that involve people with mental and physical handicaps.
Sure.
They're not like beating them around and smacking them around. They're encouraging them to meet their goals. And so I think another thing that people do is they project their own personal goals onto other people as coaches. That doesn't make you a good coach. That actually makes you a terrible coach. Like if someone comes to me and they go, man, I've been waiting to lose like 30 pounds because I need a gastric bypass so I can live.
Yeah.
You know, you have to remember as a coach, your job is to make them lose 30 pounds. Your job is not to put them in the ring. Your job is not to make them a fighter because that's not their goals. But when you start projecting that onto other people, even outside of your own gym, not only does that make you a bad coach, kind of makes you not a good person.
I think also to kind of piggyback on that, I think that a lot of times there's a lot of external pressure. Like I notice that a lot of my students when they come in, maybe they're just coming in because they want to learn Muay Thai, or they want to do something that's not lifting weights at the gym, or they're bored of running or whatever. They start to get a lot of people in their like friend circle that's like, yo, when are you going to fight? And I think they start to feel some like external pressure from their friends. Like maybe they don't want to be a fighter. Maybe they have no desire to fight. And sometimes they'll come to me like, oh, I'm thinking about getting a fight. And I'll always be like, well, like why? Like what's your motivation? Because personally, even though I teach Muay Thai, I say this very often, I'd rather no one fight. It's a lot easier for me, like to be honest with you. Like I hate to say that, but like if you want to fight, like a lot's more expected out of you, even from just a weight standpoint. Like you got to make weight. Like that's a big, complicated process of fighting. And I'm always trying to tell people like in my gym, hey, listen, like when you first start, all of your friends and family will be like, hey, when are you gonna fight? That doesn't mean you need to fight. Like if you want to fight, then that's something that you really need to evaluate on your own and decide why that is that reason. And by the way, you'll never make any money. So if you're going into it thinking that you're going to be like a Conor McGregor, probably unlikely, but that's something too where I think people, they feel this external pressure, even as a student. Maybe the coach isn't pressuring them, but maybe their friends and family are,
I think there's a lot of weird standards in the martial arts industry that should not be standards. For instance, a couple of the weird standards are like I'll rephrase this. One of the cultiest things I've ever seen comes out of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It is a very culty thing, and it's very common in the industry, and people just kind of ignore it like it's supposed to be a normal thing. It's the term crianche.
Okay.
And basically it means traitor.
All right.
And so it was a soap opera character. And there was a martial arts instructor. I obviously pinpointing the exact start of things like this is a little silly to try to do, so it doesn't matter. But it's a very commonly used term.
It's a cultural thing. Okay.
And so now what that means is if you decided that you were my student and you wanted to go to another school's seminar or go train at an open mat or even just go take a class at another martial arts facility, it's very common in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for that coach, the owner of the school, to call you a traitor or crianche and then basically do what cults do to you, which is excommunicate you if you decide that you want to go train over there. Okay, then you don't train here anymore.
I struggle with that because like there is this sense of, first off, I always say that I'm not the source. I didn't create martial arts. Unfortunately, I've had instructors in the past that very much would say that like they are the source. Like they were like, oh, like if you want to learn legitimate whatever, you have to learn it from me.
Red flag.
Yeah. So I listen, I remember, especially a few years ago, when you'd be talking to someone and they'd be like, oh, where'd you get that from? And you'd be like, oh, I saw it on YouTube. And they would be like offended by that. Like, oh my God, like that's bullshit. Like, how? Like any form of learning, especially film learning, is legitimate. Any other sport has film learning. For some reason, sometimes our sport still negates that as like less than authentic.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with learning things online at all. My problem comes when you try to rank people due to online training because I think that there's so many things that are missing.
I agree with you on that 100%.
But if you want to just go learn, like who cares? Who cares? I think that also is a part of that projecting of our own personal goals onto our students is that so many martial artists think the only way to be a legitimate, and again, keeping martial arts legitimate is my mission statement. So many people mistake keeping it legitimate for keeping it personal.
Yeah.
Like it's not. Like let's say hypothetically, if your only standard for what is and what is not legitimate is what works in a fight. Well, let's process that for a second. Okay, well, what does work in a fight for you might not work for someone else.
Of course,
for instance,
100%.
a student who might have cerebral palsy.
Sure.
So you're telling me that that person who's probably never going to be in a fight at all, at least competition, they wind up not doing that. They're probably never going to be able, well, they actually will never be able to defend themselves as well as an able-bodied person.
Sure.
And they decide that they want to do something like walk. I have a great story for this, actually. We had a guy who came into our jiu-jitsu academy way back in the day, comes into the academy. He has crutches on his arms,
Sure.
and that's his way of getting around. When he came in, every day he would come into the gym Monday through Friday, and he never missed a class. Super impressive. Great work ethic. But the dude would come in with his crutches, and then he would put them off to the side at a table near the mat, and he would try to attempt to bow on the mat, which usually caused him to stumble forward and fall. And then he would try to line up and stand up when we would bow into class, and he would fall almost every time. And I noticed it one day, and after a while, I was like, well, let me go over and talk to him and let him know that it's okay that he doesn't have to start standing because I don't want him to fall and hurt himself. And so he told me, well, no, I want to do this. And I go, well, why do you want to just like keep hurting yourself? Like I was literally concerned for his health. And he goes, well, my goal is by the time I get my blue belt, I want to walk up, I want to accept it and walk back. He goes, that is my only goal for being here.
Yeah.
And I go, that's pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
And I'll be damned if that dude did not walk up when it was time for his blue belt, accept it, and walk back. Now, by the internet bad boy standard of people who talk crap on chat rooms, that guy would have never met their standard. But he would have had to work harder and done more and gone out of his way to have to accomplish way more than I would have ever had to do as an able-bodied person.
See, I think that's the part of martial arts that the thing I love about martial arts is that it really does. I was like you. I was a bullied kid. I was made fun of. I got beat up a lot. My mom and I were poor. We moved around a lot. You know, I was someone that was kind of afraid a lot of my life, my early life. And when I was able to finally afford to do martial arts and train martial arts and be serious about it, it gave me so much confidence in my life. It gave me such a feeling of like positivity. And it's funny because like something that I struggle with is that I try to create a very inclusive environment that is very much based on learning. Like I have, I'm completing my master's degree. I try to approach martial arts from a scientific standpoint. Like, this is a way that we learn, like understanding modalities of learning. And I do struggle with sometimes where my students, maybe they want more of a hardcore experience. And I'll always say like, just so you know, hardcore is just another word for stupid. Like if you're saying, oh, this gym trains hardcore, you're just saying they train dumb because they have a lot of contact injuries and they have all these other problems. But like, I agree with you. I think that martial arts is for everyone, but also the only person they're competing against really is themselves. So in the case of your student where, that's a massive accomplishment. And to be honest with you, I hate to say this, probably a bigger accomplishment than most people that get to blue belt because like he was struggling just to basically get onto the mat. Where I see other people that, they have all of the resources, all of the opportunities, and they don't use those to the best of their ability. So I agree with you 100%. I think that I do feel with the trader thing a little bit, dude. I know that sometimes I fall into this thing where, listen, I don't care if you go to open mats. I don't care if you, train at other places. I encourage people to go to every seminar humanly available. I will say that sometimes I get maybe heartbroken a little bit when my students leave. You know what I mean? It does make me feel kind of sad.
Well, I think what happens is I think that we start to think that their journey is about us, and it has nothing to do with us. We think it does. It doesn't. People come in and out of your life all the time. So if you were to apply that to absolutely any other job ever, it would never feel the same way. For instance, let's say you were let's say you were a mechanic.
Sure.
Would you ever be like, I heard that you went to another mechanic? No, you would they even talk to you about that?
I'm sensitive. Maybe I would. Man. I don't know.
Because think about it. Like what we do is we're projecting.
Yeah.
Those are just our own insecurities. They have nothing to do with us. We just want it to because we think that we've created this atmosphere. We really do. As martial arts instructors, when you decide to open up a martial arts facility, whether it be a gym, dojo, I don't care, whatever you want to call it, you think that is your kingdom. And it is not. It is a slice, a very small slice. It is the pepperoni on the pizza. It's not the pizza. Like, and that person who goes in there, they're not there for you. If you really want to break it down to what it really is, it is someone who is paying you for a service. That is it. If you go to a barber, your barber would never go, "Hey, dude, I heard you got your hair cut across the street. What the hell's that? What's that about?" No, because you would understand that you're providing a service.
Yeah, no, I know that I do talk about our program. Like when I talk about Muay Thai, like I'll talk about our program as a product. This is a product, and if you don't feel like you're getting what you need out of the product, then you should go to another company. I think maybe I get hurt because I feel like I wish they would come to me and tell me what it is they don't like about the product, but I also know that that's very hard to do. Like I know that people, it's funny because I sometimes talk about, like, when I talk about the program, I talk about we're creating like a culture, and there's like, I joke around that there's like cult-like elements of any martial arts school, right? Where you're creating this culture and the, like, that inner circle of instructors and athletes and they have like, they do seem to have a certain amount of power over their students, you know? And I think that can be very, like, dangerous, because if the person that has that power doesn't really want the best for their students, it is a real problem.
Well, that's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to deal with cults all the time. If you look at the root word of cult, the root word of culture is cult.
Yeah.
So there are cults of everything. I think that what happens is the only difference between religion, martial arts, and a cult really is the intent of the leader. Like, if you look at martial arts, I'll give you like a comparison, like a side-by-side. If you were to walk, I'm not sure what your religion is. I'm not really talking about religion, but just a comparison of how close they are. Have you ever been to a Catholic mass?
Sure.
All right, so most people at least once throughout their life have either seen one on TV or walked into the one themselves. Now, there are different types, right? There are different types of religions, but a lot of them are really similar this way. If you walk into a martial arts facility, doesn't matter what the art is, they most have this ritual where you either bow in at the door or you bow in at the mat. Some require you to do both. So you might bow in at the door, you might bow in at the mat, or you might do both. Catholic Mass is really similar to where you walk in and there might be a little holy water right there at the front.
Sure.
And you might, for lack of better words, anoint, right?
Yeah, of course.
And then walk forward. And then most Catholic Masses, you will take a knee at the pew, anoint, and walk forward. So some don't have that holy water, some do. So very similar to martial arts. When you walk into the Catholic Mass, everyone is on one side of the room, and the leader is at the front, the figurehead. When you walk into a martial arts facility, usually everyone's on one side of the room, leader in the front. Keeping going down that path, if you look at a Catholic Mass, behind whoever's in charge is usually a stained glass, a picture, or a statue of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
If you look at martial arts, usually behind the instructor is a picture of the instructors who came before him, or at least honored in some way at the school. Then there's a point in jiu-jitsu, most classes anyway, or martial arts in general, where you shake each other's hand. You walk, "Hey, guy, man, good job." Usually when class is over. There's a part in Catholic Mass where everybody stands up and shakes each other's hands. Peace be with you. Peace. So what's the difference? Like, if these rituals are almost identical, almost to a T identical, the only difference is that a religious leader is there to teach you religion. That's their job. Their job is not to get from you. And most of the time, most religious practices are just donation-based. So they're not even requiring any kind of payment from you. They suggest it, they ask for it, but usually there's no standard monthly payment. When you go to a martial arts facility, they're providing a service. And in that service, because of the way that we operate, is that you have to pay for the service. Okay, so you pay. But then their intent is to teach you martial arts. That is it. What happens is, unfortunately, what people wind up doing with martial arts is they wind up looking at a martial arts instructor and requiring more of them than they're qualified to do.
Sure.
A martial arts instructor is not your mentor. As much as you might want them to be, they might not be qualified to be your mentor. They may be huge pieces of garbage, but they're good at beating people up. Would we ever look for a prison mentor? Would we ever go to prison and go, "I bet you there's a mentor in here because they could beat somebody up"? That would never be a standard. But in martial arts, for some reason, that is. When you go to a martial arts facility, is that person your dietitian? Well, unless they're actually certified to be your dietitian, no, they are not. They are just somebody who happens to maybe give you some advice every once in a while with that, but that's not their job. Are they there to be your guru? Well, I would hope not. I would hope that their goal there is to be your martial arts instructor and provide you for the service that you paid for. So that's where that third one comes in, the cult. So religion teaches you religion, our religious leader. Martial arts instructor teaches you martial arts. And all of that is giving. It's all going out. It's not coming in. That's not the goal. But whenever a cult rolls around, the goal of a cult leader is for everything to come to them. It's all about what they get out of the deal. And so whenever I start to see things like the term créance, that's a very selfish term, because basically what's happening is that leader has said, you're doing something that I don't like. Well, it has nothing to do with you. If that person's goal was to lose weight and they found somebody else to do that for them, if you're a really good coach, you will congratulate them for finding a way to accomplish their goal, because isn't that our goal as coaches? Help them get to their goal. And so it's very scary how easy it is for an instructor to become a cult leader, or even worse, the school itself creates a cult of personality and makes a cult because they assume what the leader wants, instead of actually being direct. And that's scary. But that's how they draw lines in the sand, I guess.
I think that's funny because I wrote down while you were talking, I wrote down instructor, not your guru, like as you were saying it. And I think that's very true, because one of the things I think happens early on, or at least happened for me, I was a kid that I didn't have a dad. And I think that when I first started doing martial arts, I kind of wanted a dad. Like I wanted that father figure. And it did not work out super well for me. I think early on in martial arts, I kind of got my heart broken a couple times by like, hey man, this guy is great at teaching martial arts. He's kind of a scumbag in real life.
Happens.
Or this guy's great at teaching martial arts, but like he sucks in every other aspect of his life, And I think it's kind of like a double-edged sword, where I say this all the time, I'm not your guru. Like I like to be called Paul. That's my name. Paul is the Latin word for short. So like, I'm tall, but it indicates that like I have trouble reaching for things. That's what my name means. You know what I mean? I don't like to be called anything else. Every couple years I'll do better. Or I'll go to seminars and I'll get these certificates that have these titles on them, but those don't mean a whole lot to me. I feel very comfortable being called Paul. Coach sometimes, and I usually think that when people call me coach because they just don't remember my name or they're not 100% sure of it. I like that too. That's fine. I'm not your guru. Like, look, dude, if you want advice and we're friends. Like the other day, one of my students messaged me and he was like, hey, is there any way that I could pay for a private this week? And I was like, yeah, I'm down. This is my availability. And he's like, well, is there any way we could like pay for a private and maybe just go for like a walk? And I'm like, well, why do you want to go for a walk? Like, and he's like, I need to talk to somebody. And I was like, listen, man, I'm your friend, man. If you want to come in and talk, I can give you like some my advice, whatever that might be worth. But like, yo, dude, that'd be weird about you. I don't want you to pay me.
Yeah, that's what a therapist's job is.
Yeah, like that's not what I do. Like, if you want to buy me lunch, man, I mean, I'm all about that lunch, though. But
I like sandwiches, man. I think that what happens is that there's also a very strange thing that happens with martial arts that doesn't really happen with a lot of other jobs. It's very unique in the martial arts industry, where when you go to a martial arts facility, you automatically are giving up some authority to someone else because you kind of have to.
Sure.
You have to admit that this person, because that's step one of martial arts. Step one is, I don't know something. I'd like to learn.
This person seems to be much better at this than I am.
Yeah. So, and then you go in and then you automatically are giving them authority. I don't really mind titles so much, because when I look at any other businesses have titles. Like if I were to have a complaint, I would ask for the manager.
Yeah.
So there's a reason titles are in place, because they give you positions of authority and understanding who's in charge of what. That doesn't bother me, and whatever you want to call yourself, coach, sensei, whatever, doesn't matter to me. I think that if I were to, I would treat you just like any other job, though. So, like, if I go into a martial arts facility, for instance, and I'm learning class, your sensei there, or your professor there, or your coach there, that's cool. When we walk out the facility, you are not that.
Yeah.
Because if I were to walk out and see you, a manager of a Walmart in a parking lot, I wouldn't be like, Manager Steve. I don't want. No, I'm a customer. I'm paying you for fruit.
Yeah.
Like, you're not Manager Steve when you leave here. Just Steve.
Yeah. Again, I feel very, I mean, I try to express this to my students because, like, I'm big on going to seminars. I like seminars.
For sure.
I think it's also an opportunity just to, like, train, but outside of the box that you're always training in. So, we'll go to seminars and instructors will introduce themselves as I'm so-and-so and with their title or whatever. And I hate to say this, like I always feel weird about like I'll listen, if that's what you want me to call you in the building, I'll call you that. And I have no problem. Like I have no ego. Like I generally suck. I just keep showing up, and I've shown up for a long enough time that I picked up a little bit of stuff. But like, I'm not calling you that outside of like, these
that would
four
be
walls,
weird.
dude. If I see you somewhere else, like I'm not gonna whatever that. Like my Instagram is Paul_EP because my degree is in exercise physiology. So I make about half my income now from being an exercise physiologist, right? And it was easy enough that people could remember I'm an exercise physiologist, hopefully, and that my name is Paul. But I think that martial arts is something that can change your identity, right? And you start to identify. For me, martial arts made me more confident, and they made me feel more in control of my life. Trust me, I'm not perfect at any means. Like I have a lot of, I love sandwiches way too much.
Yeah, they're delicious. I got you.
It's crazy, but it is something that like, go ahead. It is something that like I don't get it. Hey, let me ask you a question, Rob. Do you think when we see, like, I watch your videos, and you see these things that I think the average student, average martial arts instructor looks at it and goes, that's not real. That's not real at all. But the people in the video, it seems like they're buying in. So my question is, are they buying in because they believe it, or are they a part of the con?
It depends. So I think there are stages. We did a documentary about this. We actually, God, we're so close to getting it out too. We're talking with a company called UTA, but I'll get to that later. But we filmed for like 3 months straight. Okay. And during that time, we got to talk to people who were victims of martial arts cults.
Sure.
Some really crazy stuff, man. Like everything from rape to serious physical harm, financial fraud. The entire gauntlet. And then we got to talk to psychologists. We got to talk to cult experts. And what we've noticed is there is no one standard formula. Like everybody does it for different reasons. Like for instance, some cult leaders do it for power. Some do it for money. Some do it for fame. There's a lot of reasons you might start a cult. But the victims, on the other hand, when they're doing it, they kind of follow a very similar path. And just like anything else, people who get taken advantage of, the first step is usually grooming. So there's a process in which the leader understands that this is an outside entity coming in. So we have to kind of monitor that person at first and slowly but surely wean them into it.
Okay.
So I wouldn't learn how to knock someone out with my mind on day one. But when people see our videos, people say, well, how can people fall for that? Well, because that's not day one. That's not. Yeah. We're talking years of brainwashing. And even in Indonesia, for instance, it gets really gross over there because that's an entire culture of people, an entire group of people, like who aren't even sometimes in the martial arts, who also agree with some of these nonsensical things because it's been unchecked for so long.
Sure.
But when it comes down to being a victim of it, you might start off skeptical. You go in there, and then you learn what everybody else is learning. You learn a basic kick, a basic punch, a basic choke, something that's legitimate that everyone teaches because everyone teaches a front kick. Yeah. I can't think of one art that doesn't teach at least a front kick.
Sure.
So if I was there for a trial period or a trial class, and I walk in, and that's the first thing I learn, my walls might come down a little bit because I can rhyme or reason with that.
I've seen it.
I've seen it on TV. I've seen it used in things like MMA and the UFC and Bellator. I've seen this technique be effective, so I automatically, again, are starting off as a deficit because I'm already giving you power over me by saying I don't know what you know. Then you teach me something that I recognize, and I go, okay, now I feel a little more comfortable. Then from there on, I can start injecting just a little bit of nonsense with that. For instance, in Kyoshu Jitsu, when they take all of the acupuncture points from Chinese medicine, acupuncture, and then they call things like spleen 6 or gallbladder 32 and stuff like that, right? Okay, well, the front kick is real. And so you've taught me this thing that I know for sure if you hit me with does not feel good. You do it to me, and now I know that doesn't feel good. So I know if I do it to someone else that it doesn't feel good. Well, why does it hurt? And then all of a sudden they start explaining the why. Now, you might not necessarily know why because most of us, that's not what we do for a living. And so when they start saying it, maybe some of it makes sense. Even if it's a little out there, okay, well, I don't know what gallbladder 32 is, so you tell me, well, gallbladder 32 comes from this. And
you might be able to look up an acupuncture chart
Yeah,
or
and
something, and that name's on there.
It's a real
okay, I
thing,
see
okay.
that. Oh, yeah, I get it. Okay.
And then all of a sudden they start injecting nonsense, like if they hit you in your spleen 6, which, by the way, for anybody who doesn't know, I've been studying this nonsense forever. It's located somewhere around your shin and ankle.
Okay, spleen 6.
So
I've been looking for it.
yeah, so now if you get hit in there and then all of a sudden you see somebody get hit there and they say, now I'm going to interject my chi or inject my inner power, and they do it, and you see somebody who you've been friends with for a couple weeks now, months, maybe even years, and they collapse to the ground, normally you would go like, well, Steve is a pretty smart guy. Steve does this all the time. And all of a sudden,
Steve's a lawyer.
Yeah, and then this dude just falls over like that. It's like absolutely astonishing to you. And then you go, okay, well, now you're freaked out a little bit. And now that's where the magic trick comes in. Dale Brown, by the way, does this a lot, if you're not familiar with dust. But the magic trick is telling people the response. So when you tell people how to react, they will react. And by the way, try this. Anybody out there who teaches martial arts, try this, and I guarantee your students will follow you. They will do what you say.
Yeah.
So what you can do is say, by now, like, what's going to happen is I'm going to do this, and they will react this way. So now, before I even taught the technique, whatever it may be, I've told them how they're going to react. I've told them what to expect. I'm going to do this on gallbladder 32. You feel that pressure right there? Yeah, you feel that, right? I'm telling them that they do. I'm not asking. I'm commanding. And so now that I start poking around, like, let's say their neck, and obviously they can feel you touching their neck, then I start injecting like, well, if I do this a little harder, how does that feel? Well, of course it hurts worse.
Yeah.
Right? And so what's going to happen is you're going to notice a grimace on his face when I do this. And then they do it, and your automatic response is to have a grimace on your face. And so that's kind of the magic trick behind it, is a lot of these people are not aware that they're being guided to feel a certain way, to act a certain way, to be a certain way.
Yeah.
And I had a guy one time, by the way, contact me after I posted a video. And I've been looking through my DMs to try to find this guy, but I cannot find him because it was years ago and it's like buried in there. But he contacted me and he goes, hey, man, I'm that guy in that video who got knocked out. And he put it in quotation marks.
Yeah.
And it was one of those videos where they Kyoshu Jitsu, where they slap him on the back and the guy falls back and 3 dudes catch him.
Get his legs up and
And so he told me basically what happened was it was all a magic act. He said that he was there for a group seminar, one of those seminars where like 5 different people are teaching. And he was there for somebody else, but he just happened to pay his ticket, so he was going to go to every seminar.
Yeah.
So he shows up, and then all of a sudden the guy asks for somebody in the audience. He goes, I need a volunteer. He's like, I'll do it. So he walks up, and the guy's like, okay, well, we're going to talk about a double leg takedown. And when someone shoots in for a double leg takedown, what we're going to do is take both of our arms, and we're going to slap our palms onto their back, and it's going to activate these specific pressure points, and it's going to make the person fall over and knock out. So he goes, in his head, he's like, it's not going to work. like you're not sprawling. I'm still going to get your legs. I'm still going to dump you on your head. And so he goes in and he does what the guy asked him to do. He goes, what I want you to do is just come over here and just kind of go get in a position as if you were going to do a double leg. And so the guy does. He gets in that position and he goes, all right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and hit that pressure point and watch what happens. And so when he does it, though, his elbow hits the guy in the back of the head. And it looks like his hands are hitting the back, but it wasn't. He literally elbows him in the back of the head. But the guy obviously is waiting for that reaction from the back. He's not expecting to get hit in the back of the head. So when he does, he automatically, because he's getting hit hard in the back of the head with an elbow, he falls over. And then 3 dudes who were there to catch him real fast and start folding his legs before he gets an opportunity to have a natural reaction on his own.
Yeah.
So he was like, yeah, it was complete nonsense.
He was manufactured.
Exactly. So, but he was a part of it. But he wasn't a part of it.
Yeah.
And so that happens sometimes. So when you look at it, sometimes you could start and not know that you're a part of the grift. And then sometimes you keep going because you truly believe the grift. And sometimes, like the leaders, for instance, like I would imagine a George Dillman, who believes he can knock people out with his mind, probably knows it's a grift at first. But then you have so many people as yes men around you, and you become so disillusioned with the reality that now it's a reality to you. You really think you have these powers because everyone around you is so involved in the cult.
You're buying your bullshit.
Yeah, because you can't help it. I call it Steven Seagal syndrome.
So I have a couple questions on that. But so like I said, I've done a lot of seminars over the years, especially I lived in Miami for about 10 years, and it's an international hub, so there'd always be like a lot of Filipinos. I did Filipino martial arts for a long time.
Oh,
so
cool,
there'd be
yeah.
a lot of guys coming in from the Philippines that would teach for, maybe they come in and teach for a few hours so that they can make some money as they're traveling, layover, stuff like that. And, I feel like a lot of times I'd go to a seminar, 2-3 hour seminar. There'd always be like maybe one technique that maybe it just didn't work, like, and they're showing it and you're kind of like respectfully, you don't want to be that person. So you're seeing it and you're like, oh, maybe like this guy doesn't know, like, I hate to say this, with like Dumong, which is like more like ground Filipino martial arts, right? A lot of that stuff maybe works against a non-operator, someone that doesn't do jiu-jitsu or doesn't really understand grappling a lot. But if the person does have an operator mentality where, well, I train, I do martial arts, I do jiu-jitsu, I do whatever, it's not going to work for them. And it always feels very much like you don't want to say anything because, you don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be a jerk. You paid the money, you're there, and you're just like, oh, okay, like, we're not going to do that later. I had this ongoing joke with my friends where I say that, like, I want to, it would have to be like recorded and spoofed, but I want to go like across the country and do like a seminar series that I advertise the hell out of and just teach insane things and see if anybody is willing to call you out or say anything about it.
I hate to interject, but we actually did this for our documentary.
I've heard that. I told a few people and they mentioned you and I was like, you got me, man.
It's a cool social experiment. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Can you give us any details on the documentary?
Yeah, for sure. I can actually tell you the story about that.
Okay, please.
So right now, currently, we actually might be doing some reshoots, which I didn't expect because I thought, we crowdfunded $20,000. So just to give people like a real good insight to where we are, because there are people who are like, man, we've been waiting for like 3 years. How come it's not done yet? Well, first of all,
takes time.
Bite me. Bite me hard. Bite me in a place that would be uncomfortable for your mouth. Because when it comes down to it, we started crowdfunding. The first process, by the way, took like a year. So we got together, I found a production company, which, by the way, is not easy to find a legitimate production company who's willing to work on pennies and willing to do a lot for free. You will not find them, but I did. So thank you, Vodo Studios. They're the guys who do the Mexican martial arts skits and stuff like that.
Sure.
And I've worked with them, and they were like, dude, we love the idea. They were like, we just have to get paid for that time. And I was like, we'll figure it out. So we figured out how to crowdfund. That original process from figuring out how to crowdfund to actually putting the crowdfunding into place took about 3 months.
Okay.
Because we needed to figure out, okay, well, what can we gather that are perks that people would want to be able to donate? So we did that. We initiated it, right? After we initiated it, it took about another 3 months in order to actually raise the funds, which we wanted $200,000. We raised 20. And so we were like, all right, well, can we do this with the budget we have? We were like, yes, but
sounds about right.
It sucks, but yes, we can. And then we announced, all right, well, when are we all available to film? Which wasn't until about another 4 or 5 months out. So now we're already sitting at a year from concept to money to film. Then this little thing, I don't know if anybody heard of it. It kind of happened. It was, just a slight inconvenience for most people. It was this thing called COVID.
I've read about this in books.
It's not anything that most people were affected by.
No.
Not isolating in homes.
No.
COVID hit literally 2 weeks before we were supposed to film.
Okay.
And then it was like, shit. What? How can we actually film a martial arts movie documentary without martial arts schools being open?
Or do this via Zoom.
Well, we had to do a lot with Zoom. But with that said, we made it work. So we wound up obviously we had to push it back. Well, it was like another almost year before we were able to actually film.
Yeah.
Well, that was 2 years out. People, luckily, thank God, we just were so open about where our process was and what was going on, and people are so understandable. Out of everyone who's donated to our project, we only had one person not understand. Only one. $20,000, only one person was like, yeah, man, I'm just going to get a refund. And they only donated $10. And so that person, this is during COVID. We were like, well, COVID's happening. We have to wait. And they were like, nah, that's no excuse. And we were like, okay, here's your money. It is an excuse because there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah, how am I supposed to do this, my man?
Yeah, exactly. And then, we finally were able to film. So that's where we are now. And then now we're talking to a company called UTA. They want to give us like an extra $800,000. We gave them the pitch deck. They were like, we think this would be a good docuseries. And so we were like, well, we don't have enough for a docuseries. They were like, well, if we gave you money, could you do it? We're like, if you give me money, dude, I could do a lot.
Could do anything.
Yeah, so enough money. You see me doing some weird, crazy things. But anyway, one of the experiments we wanted to do, which was the experiment you were talking about, was we brought in a guy who was a fraudulent martial arts instructor, who was teaching the no-touch knockout stuff. I filled that classroom full of 10 people who all train martial arts, different martial arts. We had like a guy who was like 6'5", who did capoeira for like 15 years and owned a school. We had a little chick who was like a Krav Maga instructor who was like 110 pounds. Like, we ran the gambit. Guy came in, and when he winds up coming in, he winds up doing his first hour. I told everybody, just go with it. It's a 2-hour seminar. Just go with it. Whatever he does, just pretend it works. We'll see what happens. But after that hour, literally be yourself. I didn't tell him to give the guy a hard time, to be rude, to fight him, nothing. I just wanted to see. I said, be yourself. After that first hour of us basically doing a whole bunch of nonsense that doesn't work, this dude is profusely sweating. Once hands started raising. He's bone dry for an hour. But once we started like letting people ask questions, he's sweating through his white T-shirt. Like, these are basic questions, too. Nothing crazy. Like, how would this possibly work in a street fight? Like, he's...
And I take it he doesn't know.
Yeah, he doesn't.
He doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah, oh, no. He was the only one who wasn't in
So
on it.
The first hour, he's like, doing great.
Yeah, he really did, man. He was like, he's up there. He's charismatic.
It's the best I've ever done, man.
Yeah, he was like, this is great. Everybody's having a good time. And then we got to the questions, and then he got asked so many questions that he decided to change up his lesson plan, which was like really well printed and like documented. I'd never seen a lesson plan like that for a seminar.
Yeah.
Usually it's like, we're doing a seminar, and then the lesson plan happens as you see it. This guy had like detailed stuff. So with that said, he was like, all right, well, I'll open the floor to questions. And he goes, anybody who wants to learn something specific, ask me, and I'll do a technique of it so that way we can continue on the seminar.
Yeah.
And so somebody said, what about a knife? And his face lights up.
This is it.
Oh, he
this
goes,
is my moment.
he goes over to his bag. He picks up his rubber training knife. He comes back.
Bro.
And somebody said, he asked the crowd, he goes, what kind of attack are we talking about with a knife? And someone said, what about an upward prison shank? Like if somebody's trying to grab you and stab you in the stomach.
It's like middle school all over again. I'm with you.
Like my middle school experience. And so he winds up taking his hands, making fists like in the shape of an X, doing like an X block, but he's trying to use his knuckles to like hit the guy's arm.
Yeah.
The person he handed the knife to, by the way, is one of the controls in the experiment, which was the only person who had never trained martial arts ever.
Okay.
Not a one class, which was our camera dude. So we put him in there. We're like, you never trained? He was like, no. I was like, you're in there now. You're training. You're taking this class because we want to see what happens.
Yeah.
And so our camera guy stabbed him 17 times while he's trying to do this. Now, granted, this is the only person who's never trained at all.
Oh, my God.
So then someone in the crowd goes, hey, well, what happens if we just do this? Because now they're not pretending anymore. They walked up and did a 2-on-1 grip on our cameraman's arm, the knife arm, and our cameraman tried to stab him and couldn't do it. So it's clear that this is just a better option, at least, to not get stabbed. You got stabbed 17 times, you got stabbed none. So the guy goes, no, that's ridiculous. You don't want to do that. He goes, the reason is I want to be able to get close to negate and be able to do elbows and knees and headbutts and want to take him out. So he bum rushes our camera guy. Camera guy, like out of nowhere, is like, and freaks out and gets body locked.
Of course.
But the guy doesn't actually grab the knife arm.
Control the knife.
So our camera guy, in a moment of genius, has his knife arm behind him, and he's pretending to stab him in the back, but never actually touches him with a knife. So the guy's giving this amazing monologue. As you can clearly see, I have complete control of my assailant. There's nothing he could do about it. Meanwhile, he got stabbed 48 times during that speech. So... the best part, and this is where it comes from funny to sad. Like, there's always that line that we do that I ride here, and I don't know why it happens. It just always does. It goes from, like, really, like, funny, because everybody's, at this point, like, some of them are still wearing masks because of COVID, so you can tell, like, they're just laughing their ass off in their masks. Somebody in the crowd goes, what happens if he stabs you in the back? And the guy goes, dead serious. He goes, well, if you don't see the blood, it's not that bad. That was his actual answer.
Solid, you know.
And to his knowledge, he still thinks that most of these people have never really trained martial arts before. So if you paid for a seminar and you went to that guy's seminar and the answer was, and you really believed it because, you're giving that person some authority over you. You go, you know what? Never been stabbed in the back multiple times, but I mean, he's the expert.
I
so-
mean, like it makes sense too, though, because when I hurt myself, if I don't look at it, that always makes me feel better. It's once I start looking at it, I'm like, oh, that's definitely broken.
Man, last time I got stabbed 48 times in the spine, I just didn't look at it, and I was good.
That'd be great, man. That'd be great. Oh, do you ever worry that, like, when you, like, for example, with the dust guy, like, that you're giving them like extra attention?
They should have extra attention.
You know,
Like, the thing is I think people's mentalities are a little askew with the goal. My goal is to give them attention.
Yeah.
I want them to have attention. Like, if you look at Dust, right? Dust is a perfect example of someone who is now the international face of incompetence.
yeah.
He is a meme. Like, people use him and make fun of him to his face now while he's just getting money off of social media. I see it a lot differently. What I look at is I look at him as a actual martial arts business owner, which he is. He has actual legitimate students in a real school, brick and mortar in Detroit. Well, Ferndale. Like, that's the irony.
I guess real quick segue. This is not a gag. Like, he legitimately thinks that this, like, the outfits, that's him.
100%. That is not a bit. That is who he is.
Okay, all right. So I'm God, I'm sorry to break you off from there. Okay.
No, I get it. Like, it's very hard for people to
So I've
understand.
had this conversation where people are like, well, maybe it's a gag. And I'm
not.
like, maybe it is, dude. I don't know.
It is 100% not. Vice, he's been doing this forever. Vice did a documentary on him about him years ago, well before his internet fame. Like, and what people think is they go, okay, well, he's internet famous and he's making money. That's counterproductive. No, I see it so much differently. When I see him online doing a video with a YouTuber and he's not in a classroom teaching, good. That's
Okay.
one less class
I
he's
see what you're
teaching.
saying. I see what you're saying.
When I see like everyone in comment sections that are not his comment sections roasting him, good. Because what happens is the majority of people know he's full of crap. And what people kind of forget is they don't look at the real overall picture here. The overall picture is not to not give them attention. It is to give them attention. It's to show and educate and let people make their own decisions.
Yeah.
If people look at something like Dale Brown and a car, and there's a gun to the back of his head, and he tells you to use your elbow to pin the gun to the seat,
Yeah, I've
which
seen
is
this video.
impossible.
Yeah.
And that's going to save your life. We could sit there and go, you know what, that's ridiculous. That's one way of doing it. We can all just say that's ridiculous. Or we could say that's ridiculous because, and show better options and show better reasonings and show people who are better at what they do. And then if he winds up getting internet famous because he's incompetent, good. He's now, that's the point, is he's incompetent.
Do you think that what was his, I don't know enough about him. What was his background before he opened a school?
Well, I mean, he was in the military. It was, from what I can tell anyway, was not a very long-lived career in the military. He himself got his MOSs confused, which is
Okay,
not
yeah,
something anyone in the military ever
I
does.
saw that as well.
Like, if you were in the military, you know what your MOS is. And then there'll be people out there, well, you know those change from time to time. His did not. That, like, and the one that his didn't change except for Vietnam was the last time his particular MOS had changed, and when it did, it wasn't even the actual
one
job that he said it
that
was.
he's
So
confused by.
yeah, so you wouldn't be confused first of all. But when you're looking at somebody like Dale Brown and you think, oh my God, like, he's got all this attention and all this money. I don't care how rich he is. I don't care if he makes money. You got to figure a con man's going to be a con man.
Yeah.
If he wasn't making money doing this, he's going to make money doing something else.
Do you think that I'd probably get some heat for saying this. I often say that in our industry, there's a lot of scumbags and con artists.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there's something about our industry that they find attractive to, like, they come into it with that mentality, or do you think that, like, that changes over time for them?
No, I think that the industry is unregulated, which is a very attractive thing to a lot of people.
Okay.
Like, you don't have to have literally any qualifications. You could make it up. And as long as you're a good conversationalist and you're good and charismatic enough to convince people,
Yeah.
you don't even have to prove it. Like,
Yeah.
like, how many people just, like, have never sparred ever, and then no one ever pays that any attention? Because eventually what happens is we all age out of that part of our career.
Same.
So,
Same.
like, by the time you get to, like, your 60s, people aren't going to look at
Yeah.
you and go, how come you never spar, huh?
Yeah.
That's a 20-year-old mentality.
Yeah. Well, I'm 41, and, like, I have a pretty bad injury with my left foot, so I have trouble, like, just posting. So I don't really spar a lot anymore. Like, I can't physically do it. You know, like, now I have successful competitors, and I've been training a long time, and people know me, and there's all those things that ate into it. And I think the really nice thing about competitive martial arts is there's no bullshit. Like if my guy goes to a tournament and does really, really well, and I can repeat that success with multiple students, I think that's really positive. I think sometimes in the realm of self-defense, there's a lot more room for bullshit.
Which is ironic if you think about it.
Yeah.
Really think about it, because a lot of self-defense instructors, for instance, Gabrielle Rubin is one of those people. Gabrielle Rubin used to do this Tech Insider. And so Tech Insider would release these little like snippets of self-defense videos. And like one of her videos, which is the funniest one to me ever, is she talks about getting mounted. You're on your back. The person's mounted you. What you're going to do is you're going to wiggle your hips to hit them in the groin, and that's going to get them off of you. It's like anybody who's ever been legitimately mounted by somebody who's mounted you, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
But this was a self-defense expert. These are the same type of people who will look at competition martial arts, sport martial arts, and go, well, that's unrealistic.
That'll never work.
Yeah. And then meanwhile,
So I can kick him in the groin.
Meanwhile, the argument on the other side of the aisle is that there's a lot of nonsense in self-defense, which there is. The truth is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
There's nonsense on both sides. It just depends on who's teaching it. And competition is an extremely effective way of understanding if what you do does work against an assailant who is trying to hurt you. Now, granted, there are no rules in the street. Yeah, that's true. But like, if there are no rules in the street and I could beat you with the rule set, I promise you I could beat you without the rule set. Like, if I can, for instance, I just kick him in the groin. You know, that guy could do that too, and it doesn't require any training.
And also, too, I have been in situations where I've seen, for whatever reason, not all people respond to groin shots in the same way.
For sure.
You know what I mean? So
or the other one, I'd eye gouge him. You know, they could do that too. And then, my God, another one of my favorite, just to dig into Dale Brown just a little deeper because he's a huge turd of a human. There was a video of him, and he's got someone who has him dead to rights in a rear naked choke. And he talks about reaching back, putting your thumbs in their eyes to be able to get them off of you, which is a nonsensical thing.
Yeah.
The dude in the video does the rear naked choke correctly at first. He gets him in a rear naked choke, and if you notice in a rear naked choke, there are two triangles. One is that person's head. The other one should be where your head goes, hiding your eyes, hiding your face, and stuff like that. So the guy starts off doing that, which when you reach back, you would never be able to get to his eyes. So the guy has to purposely lift his head to be able to get eye
these
gouge.
are where my eyes are.
And so he's like, this is the streets. There's no rules, blah, blah, blah. Well, like, there's actually a case study already done in MMA. There were two females fighting. I do not remember their names off the top of my head, where one was caught dead to rights in a rear naked choke. She literally freaks out, like live on the UFC, and she starts trying to dig her finger into the other lady's eye and still gets choked unconscious. Or she at least gets submitted without over-exaggerating. So, like, there's a case study on the stage of MMA where this did not work in MMA, where someone broke the rules and still it did not work.
So what changes would you like to see? Some type of regulation? How would we do that?
Self-regulate. Information is king. Like, you remember the Truth Campaign?
The name sounds familiar.
Well, they used to do these ads. They were anti-smoking campaigns.
Okay, yes. Yeah.
They were 30,000 people are standing in New York, and all of a sudden they all drop. And it's like, this many people die of secondhand smoke every year.
Yes.
They didn't punch the president of Marlboro in the face.
Yeah.
All they did was just give people information. And then what happens is now people are more aware of the dangers of this, and then they start being better educated, and they make better decisions on their own. I think that if you wind up putting a regulating body to martial arts, it will be corrupt, and it will just destroy it and make it not what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because absolute power corrupts absolutely. But I do think that if the industry as a whole starts creating some basic standards of people, and then the people who have never trained martial arts have a better understanding and resources to know, because martial arts is convoluted.
Yeah.
You go to this karate school, and for some reason, this guy's called sensei. You go over here, this guy's called sifu. This guy's called senpai. This guy is called professor. This guy's called coach. Like, for us as martial artists, you'd be able to spot those arts real quick.
Yeah.
But anybody who's never trained, I don't know the difference.
Yeah,
You know?
I think that's the thing too. Is that, like, you know, it's funny because I was talking to one of my friends, and I was like, oh yeah, I have McDojo Life coming on to do the podcast, and I'm like, I'm kind of nervous about it. And they're like, why? And I'm like, he's a celebrity.
No, I'm not.
And they were
Just
like,
a guy.
But in our industry, I think most people know who you are.
Okay.
They know who your Instagram is in our industry. But my friend doesn't work in martial arts. She doesn't do martial arts. She's never done martial arts. And she's like, who is that? And I'm like, he's famous. And she's like, really? And I'm like, 100%, 100% famous. And she's like, she was like, she had no connection to it, you know, but that's the average person, right? Because her kids are getting older and they're going to, at some point, maybe do martial arts. She's not aware of that. You know what I mean? Like, maybe she'll become an educated consumer, hopefully, you know. That's one of my other things too about like seminars and workshops and stuff like that. I really like my guys that go to seminars and workshops because I want them to see what other people are doing, and I want them to be able to compare and contrast that to what we're doing. Because sometimes what's going to happen is they're going to bring something back that's better, and they're going to start using it and sparring it, and we're going to adopt it into our system. But also sometimes there's going to be like confirmation where they go in and they go, oh wow, okay, everyone's doing it this way. That's a positive thing, you know. I think that is like one of the litmus tests for, well, at least for my students. Like if, you know, like I have Asa Tenpal come up and do seminars a lot, and I like Asa, and he's obviously a very well-traveled and experienced Muay Thai fighter. And he's having a baby in July. Congratulations, Asa. Ripley, he's having a girl. That's awesome. But like I like to do a lot of that stuff where sometimes they come up and they show us stuff that I'm like, wow, I need to start showing that. That's super cool. Like that's better than what I'm showing. And I can admit that because again, like I'm not the source. I didn't create martial arts, dude. It's evolving. Like hopefully it's evolving. So to me, I think that helps a lot too. But again, I know there's schools that are very closed off that don't do that.
I think that if we really want to change the industry, we need to change the standards of what we look at and critique. I think that when we look at technique over everything else, that we're really doing a disservice to the industry.
Okay.
I went to the SHOT Show. I don't know if you ever heard of SHOT Show.
Absolutely, of course.
It is awesome. And they tell you it's going to be like a week-long thing, and when you go, even with that week-long amount of time, you will not be able to speak to every vendor there.
Yeah.
So they tell you in order to speak to the vendors you want, you need to pick up this big map, go through and figure out which ones you want to speak with, and plan your day out because you will not speak to everybody. That's the SHOT Show.
Yeah.
We have another industry. I'm actually speaking at this year. It's called Martial Arts Super Show.
Sure, of course.
It's our industry's biggest
Is this
expo.
in Las Vegas again? Or?
It is.
Yeah, okay.
But that's our industry's biggest expo. Now, we can all know without even doing martial arts that martial arts has been around longer than the gun industry.
Sure, of course.
Because we have had hands before we invented guns.
Since Cain hit Abel with a brick.
So,
you know what I mean? Like,
it's pretty simple to understand that. So why is it that I can walk around the Martial Arts Super Show through all their vendors and like really take the time to speak to everyone in a matter of probably like an hour?
Yeah.
Right? But I can't do it in the gun industry.
Do you think that is because the gun industry is just financially much more viable?
Why? That's the thing.
I don't know.
See, like that's the biggest thing right now is when you look at the old school standard of what a McDojo is, I'm trying to make people think deeper. People right now will complain about technique all day long. They'll complain about the most petty, stupid things I could ever possibly think of, and it gets me heated every time. People will bitch and moan that this Taekwondo black belt, they got their black belt in like 2-3 years. They're frauds. 2-3 years. It's ridiculous. BJ Penn got his black belt in 3 years. Does that make him a fraud? No, but he does jiu-jitsu. No. So now the argument isn't, okay, well, it's this time frame. Now the argument is that they just don't do what you do. So that means that particular argument is subjective.
Yeah.
So if it's subjective, get it out of here. Stop arguing about some subjective semantic BS that doesn't matter. All right, well, what about how much they charge? That school over there's a McDojo. They charge too much. To who?
Yeah.
They charge too much to who? Why do Lamborghinis still sell? Because there are people who could afford it.
Yeah.
So it's too expensive for you. It doesn't mean it's too expensive. It's just too expensive to you.
And also, maybe, unfortunately, like, look, dude, this is something I struggle with, and I've had a conversation on a previous episode about this because I was a poor kid that couldn't afford martial arts, and I want martial arts to be affordable for everyone. I really do. You know, if you're listening locally and you're in like the Orlando area and you have connections at like a middle school or something, I would be more than willing to go and help create a program where, you know, I can teach middle school kids self-defense or learn how to feel more confident using Muay Thai or kickboxing or whatever. But segue, I have to pay my bills. Like, and I think sometimes that's one of those things where it's like, I feel bad about charging all the time because I hate that when I see someone come in and they're, you know, coming into martial arts and I see it having a positive effect in their life. Hey, I had a guy come in, I always say the story, that was drinking too much And, you know, he's an adult, and he came in and started training with us. He was like, oh, I can't drink on the days I train because I feel horrible. Fair, you know, and now he's been sober for like 5 years. Like, and he doesn't train with me anymore, and he doesn't train at all anymore. Like, he kind of fell out of love with it, but he's still sober. But I have people that come in that are successful for like 3, 4, 5 months. I see it having a positive effect in their life, and then they can't afford it anymore. And we're kind of like collectively like, go fuck yourself because you can't pay the bills anymore.
So here's the thing.
And that's a real problem.
Here's the thing. This is, again, this is a part of that mentality I'm trying to change with people, especially in the industry. So I've been doing martial arts business consulting as a job, and I make more money off of that than McDojo Life.
For sure.
But I've been doing business consulting for schools for over a decade. And one thing that I've noticed is the worst schools, the worst, are usually the ones that charge the least. Because their mentality is so askewed that they think that by devaluing what they do, that they're somehow helping people. You're not. You really might think that. If you were going to run a nonprofit,
Sure,
that's different. But if you're running a for-profit and you think by taking the value of what you do and dropping it to nothing and basically giving it away is going to help anyone, it's not. Like, for instance, I'll give you a couple examples. One, how many martial arts schools out there have like 4 or 5 employees who are not actually paid employees?
Most. I'd say most, yeah.
All right, so that means that you're not providing your employees with health insurance, I'm assuming.
100%.
And that means you're not paying your employees their bills.
100%.
And that means that you're not able to help them get gas. And that means you're not able to help them get food. And that means you're basically taking advantage of them for a service that now you've devalued.
Yeah.
Okay, well, rather than asking the question, how can I afford to pay them? You think, not saying you yourself, but I'm saying most gyms go, you know what? We can't afford to pay them, so let's take advantage of them, is literally what's being said. But somehow in our heads, we go, you know what? I can't afford a front desk person, so rather than figuring out how to model my business so I can afford it, I can't afford to provide better equipment for my students. I can't afford to buy a better space. I can afford to buy more advertising so I can get more students in my class. You know, like with $0, guess how many students you usually wind up getting in the door? Zero students.
Yeah.
So if I wind up making $5, now I have $5 I could pay for flyers. Well, now I might be able to get 1 student in the door. Well, I couldn't have done that without charging. Okay, well, how many seminars have you ever taken from the dude who lives in the cardboard box?
None that I'm currently aware of.
Why not? He's giving it away for free.
Fair.
But what happens is when we look at a product or a service, we wind up devaluing ourselves when we don't need to. It's a very sad thing. Like, for instance, I'll give you a question. All right. If you were going to open up a business, right, a martial arts school tomorrow, for-profit martial arts school, how many students would you start with once the doors open? Right off the bat, first month, you just opened up. How many students are you going to wind up?
None, unless they came from somewhere else.
I'll give you an answer. It should be at least 200.
Okay.
And here's why.
Okay.
The typical way of doing a martial arts school is I open the door, and then once I open the door, I then advertise, and then I hope that people show up. The old, if you build it, they will come.
Mm-hmm.
The real model of how to do it, which actually, by the way, does not devalue or take advantage of anybody because it doesn't talk about prices at all, is you're going to open up in, like, let's say April.
Okay.
So that means January probably is build-out time. That's when I'm in there. That whole entire month is dedicated to making sure my equipment is in and all that. During that time, that is also advertisement time. So you should be taking flyers or doing advertisements
similar to LA Fitness or 24-hour Fitness or
anything
something
like
that
that
has like a sign up now for your founder rate kind of deal.
Or not even that. You can even do free trials if you wanted to, because again, we're not talking prices. We're just talking about straight up advertising. If you wanted to do free trials, you're more than welcome to do so. I don't do that because I get paid for my time. I don't know why anybody on the world, if I told you any job ever, if I was like, all right, you can work here, but every time you work on Mondays, I'm never paying you for Mondays, but you still have to work on Mondays, you would probably tell me to kiss my ass.
Yeah, that's not going to work for me.
Yeah, but you do it to ourselves in martial arts all the time because we do free trials.
Yeah.
You did all these hours of work for all these people. Like, if you really, like, if someone can afford it, they can afford it. If they can't, they can't. But when it comes down to like your advertisement, by the time you get to April, if January, February, and March was dedicated towards training your staff and getting people in the door, then by the time you open your door, every one of your classes in April should be full of trial members. Okay. You should not open the door at all from zero.
Okay.
So all of these people that come in, you just advertised. that has nothing to do with your payment. That has nothing to do with like cheap or expensive. That has to do with actual just like marketing.
How would? Oh God, we could probably do like 3 hours on that. So essentially, you're doing some kind of data capture where you're getting like their information. Hey, this is our expected opening date, and signing people up in advance. Essentially,
well, you're just getting them in there for trial classes. Like, for instance, you had 3 months knowing that you were going to open up. So what most people do is they don't start advertising until after they open.
You're signing people up for trial classes way before.
Yeah, and then you're getting them in the door. Now, again, that has nothing to do with prices. That has nothing to do with it being too expensive. All that has to do with is did you market?
Yeah.
And most martial artists don't do that because they don't think about it like that. But then if I were to tell them, like, look, you're devaluing what you do, and they go, no, I'm not. I'm providing a great service. What you're providing on the mat has absolutely nothing. I could literally do this. I promise you this. And anybody that wants to take me up on this challenge, I'm down. I could go into an empty building. I could take a shit on the floor, and I will sell that shit, that piece of shit, in a month.
Do you think that's because often martial arts is not looked at as a legitimate business industry?
Martial artists don't look at it as that way.
Yeah.
It's looked down.
We don't even look at it that way.
It's a problem. It's looked down upon to be successful. And I think what happens is in our own mind, we create this weird moral boundary of like, if I'm making money, then I've sold out, or if I'm making money, I'm a bad person. Like, no, if you're making money, what you do with that money will make you a good or bad person. What you're selling the person will make you a good or bad person. Like, if you're teaching a legitimate martial arts class and really helping people, and you've told them exactly what they expect, there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to give out free classes, do that. If you want to start a non-for-profit, do that. But don't do that old adage BS that most people do to themselves where you go, we only have 15 students, but we have like the best 15 students. I don't want to grow anymore. Yeah. Why are you charging? Why did you start a business? Teach them for free. Well, I have to pay my bills. No. What you did was you just wind up putting yourself in a position where you're trying to justify being terrible at business.
Yeah. I have experienced that before where people will say to you stuff like, well, we're not trying to make money.
Then why charge?
You're not trying to make money because this is like instead of you admitting failure, you're using this red badge of courage of, oh, we're not trying to be successful here. How much money did you invest to not be successful? I don't understand.
And how you do anything is how you do everything. And that is just so true when it comes to martial arts. People will go, like we work so hard in our gym and stuff like that. Like I can guarantee you that if I like scratch a little bit off the surface and you can see the BS right off the bat. Yeah. Like, okay, so you care about your students. All right, fair enough. How come your studio smells like someone's groin? Like, you really cared about them, right? But you didn't care enough to clean the bathroom. Yeah. So now you have this dirty facility where people could catch these crazy infections, but you care.
And I just don't understand why. It's like, I struggle with this so much, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm always amazed by the fact that people they don't see these things and go like, oh no, this is not good for me. But instead they almost see that as like a sign that this is like legit. And it's just it's such a crazy thing. I think your analogy about like the tire mechanic. Like if I go to a tire mechanic and I stand there for 5 minutes and I'm sketched out by the place, I'm like gonna dip. I'm gonna be like, I don't know if this is the right place to give me tires.
And what people forget, especially in martial arts gyms, is our consumers are still consumers. They are your client, yeah, and they are your student once they sign up. But before they sign up, they're not your student.
Yeah,
they're looking at your business like they've looked at every other business, and they will continue to do so even after they're students. They will look at things like when they walk into the bathroom, is it dirty? They will make a judgment call off of that. They'll say, did the person call me back? Which most gyms don't. They'll say, when I walked in, was I greeted? And here's the trick, by the way, is they should be greeted within 3 seconds of them walking in the door. That should be the standard for any martial arts school. If you didn't greet them, there'll be people out there making excuses right now. I can just hear it in their heads. Well, what if I'm working out? Why did you schedule somebody for the time you're working out? Like, well, what if I'm teaching a class? Why did you schedule someone during a time you're teaching a class?
Yeah.
Well, I'm by myself. Okay, so schedule them to come in about 30 minutes before your class starts.
Yeah.
Like, these are all solutions.
Or even, if you're teaching class and someone comes in, you can acknowledge them. You know what I mean? Like, there's no reason. If you're not aware of your front door in your business, you have bigger problems.
Yeah,
man.
for sure. Or like even look down that road. Like this is literally my favorite stuff to talk about in the industry. I love talking martial arts business, especially from doing consulting work, because I've been able to see a lot of gyms who all have very similar problems, because of mentality. Like, for instance, what's better? Someone walks in. You didn't tell them anything. You didn't schedule them. You just said, yeah, we have classes Monday through Friday. Come in whenever you get the opportunity. Okay, you now have officially started off unprofessional because you left it all into their hands. Or you said, all right, well, we have classes available. It looks like I have an opening on Tuesday, March 32nd. Will that work for you? They go, yeah, actually, that does work for me. All right, cool. Let me get some information. I get you signed up. Oh, by the way, before you come into the class, I just want to get you prepared, okay? So a couple things. One, no shoes are allowed on the mat because we don't want to, we want to keep things sanitary. We don't want to get glass or mess up anything. But when you come in, also, we're going to have somebody greet you at the front door so that way you're not lost. They're going to go over how class works. They're going to go over class structure. They're going to find out why you're here. They're going to learn if you have any injuries. And then they're going to go ahead and show you a partner. That partner is going to be somebody who's been with us for a long time.
Makes sense, yeah.
And then, by the way, once you're done with that, we have a great first day special. I would suggest bringing a form of payment to take advantage of that.
And you're mentally preparing them for exactly the experience that they should have.
Exactly.
Almost making a promise or a contract to what they should be experiencing.
Well, because what happens is that it's their first day going into a violent, what they assume is going to be violent.
In an environment that they probably know nothing about the culture.
They think it's going to be hostile.
Anything, yeah.
And then, that's another whole 3-hour seminar is just community. But how someone feels when they walk in your door is a very important thing. And if they feel safe and they feel like they can be comfortable there, then they'll probably want to be there. No one watches season 4, episode 5 of a show that sucked ass on the pilot episode.
Yeah.
Right? So no one's going to want to be there week 3 if their very first experience was horrible.
I also say that, I say this often, there's no learning in fear. If I'm training with someone and the whole time I'm like, this dude's going to hurt me, I'm no longer learning.
That is a fantastic quote.
You know what I mean?
I can agree with that.
There's no learning in fear. And I've said that a bunch, and I think sometimes one of my biggest pet peeves when I'm teaching is I'm slow down. There's no, if we're working on a slip, I need 2 things. If you're slipping my punch, 1, I need my partner to be throwing on target. Because if he's throwing a punch over my shoulder to start off with, I can't really learn.
For sure.
He has to be putting on target. But also, he has to be going at a pace that's slow enough that if I make a mistake and I get touched up, I'm not hurt. I'm oh, that, I got oh, that touched me. But I'm not my nose isn't broken. I'm not bleeding out of the mouth. Because the minute I'm afraid, I'm going to start making these big gregarious movements and I'm way over where I need to be and I can't learn, And that's I say that so often with my students, just slow down, on target. Hey, I need you to slow down. So I guess if you're listening at home, Les, what they say is true, dude. Technique, you have to learn your technique before you can learn speed. And if you have really solid technique, you could go pretty slow and still be fairly successful.
For sure.
I think almost a prime example of that is jiu-jitsu and the fact that when you're going with someone really well, they're not spazzing. They're not moving quickly. They're just slowly securing, slowly inch by inch, moving to where they need to be, using energy when they need to use it, not using energy when they don't. But I think that inherently people think that they're going to be really naturally good at fighting. And when they come in, they realize this is not, this is not a naturalistic style of I always liken it to how long did it take for an infant to learn how to walk? Why are you going to come in and you've never done martial arts before and think that you're going to be great at this thing? And
you're saying 2 things, by the way, that completely correlate with the other conversation we were just having about business. The guy who comes in and thinks that he's going to be good at business. And, when we talked about the street fighter or, the guy who comes in, it's I'm from the streets. All right, cool. Have you ever trained before? Nah, man, but I'm good. I'm undefeated. Oh, so you had actual fights before. Well, everybody who's ever owned a gym has seen this guy. And then we all laugh at that guy, right?
Yeah.
But then martial arts instructors will know nothing about how to run the business. They know nothing about lead generation. They'll know nothing about retention rates. They'll know nothing about conversion rates. Any martial arts instructor who is running a successful martial arts business right now, if I ask you, what is your lead generation, what's your conversion rate, and what's your retention rate, they can tell me in their sleep. Right? Because those are numbers you have to have in order to grow your school.
Yeah.
But what happens is martial arts instructors don't think about business as technique. So they go, oh, man, I've been doing martial arts forever and my martial arts is good.
Yeah. So I have, like I said, I teach martial arts and then I'm an exercise physiologist. And One of the things that I like to do is I like to help educate people. So 2 weeks ago, I went and talked to an undergrad college class at UCF about what it is to become a personal trainer after graduating. And one of the first things I said is that you are a business professional first. You are a coach or a trainer or whatever title that you want to call yourself second after being a business professional. And I think in the personal training world especially, there's a lot of people that don't understand that, where they show up 5 minutes late for their client's time. It's like, hey, you're a business professional. Or they show up to train their client and they know exercise, but they don't have a plan for what that day is going to look like, so they're freelancing. And same thing in martial arts, man. Like you have to be a business professional first, all those other hats that you might wear, none of those, you can't wear any of those hats if you can't keep the doors open. This is something that I ask people a lot. I'm like, why can't martial arts schools stay in business? Because it seems like such an easy model of, I provide a service and people pay for that service, and a lot of people want that service. But man, I know gyms go out of business left and right. It's wild to me.
It's 100% ego. There is no other word to use. It's someone who looks at the business and thinks that without educating themselves in the business, that they will do it. Like, I'll give you a really easy example. If I made the world's greatest pizza, delicious pizza, and I put it on my table, I know that pizza's delicious. And I stare at it, you know how many people are going to eat that pizza?
Nobody.
Me.
Yeah.
So just because you're good at an armbar, good at fighting, undefeated, does not mean you'll be good at business, because it is a separate entity. And just because you've worked at a gym doesn't mean that you actually understand the business either. Mostly because most gyms in the industry don't set up standards of policies and procedures.
Yeah, there's no standard operating procedure.
It's very sad, and it does not have to be that way. It doesn't.
Now, I guess the question that people are going to ask, because again, we created this podcast because I want people in our industry to listen to it, not people that are, it's not really an entertainment based, like we're not talking about this fighter on your favorite show or whatever.
For sure.
I want to talk about more of the practicality of martial arts and the conversations that martial artists need to have. And one of them is like, hey man, if you want to be a martial artist and you want to stay in business, you need to be successful at that.
For sure.
Do you feel it? So is consulting, is hiring a consultant, is that affordable?
Should be. I mean, think about this. Like, for instance, if you did hire a consultant at, every consultant has different fees, right? But if you did hire a consultant, like, let's say it's something that you thought was astronomical. Let's say maybe it's like $2,000-$3,000. Because a lot of people, a lot of smaller businesses, when you start hearing numbers in the four figures, they like, man.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
But how much are you charging for your clients? So, let's just go off of, if you only charge $100 a month, right? And you signed up somebody for a year, that's $1,200 for one new client.
Okay.
So if they got you to sign up 2 new clients off the information they gave you, just 2, you still made a profit.
Yeah.
So what happens is people don't see that bigger picture. It's the same thing that when they don't understand that if they start having people work their front desk for free, that they're actually starting to work backwards, not forwards. They don't really get that, because what happens is what they did was, rather than saying, I'll make the schedule around what I can do, what I can do and do efficiently, I'm going to fill the schedule up right off the bat with every class known to man, because I want to offer so much. I'll offer the adult class, the kids class, Monday through Sunday. I'll have all these classes, but you only have one staff member. What they did was, they don't understand. They think they're doing something good for people. They're really doing a detriment to their client, because you can't be everything to everybody all the time. So if you were going to open up a martial arts school, for instance, this is free advice for all of you, start off with a slimmed down class. Okay, you want to do adult classes. Okay, you do adult classes to start Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That's it. That's all you provide. Okay, you want to do kids classes Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. That's all you provide. And then that's it.
And would you charge less initially?
No. Absolutely not.
Okay.
Because what happens is, at first, this is what you're charging, and then as I go on, I add more to what you're paying, and your payment doesn't change.
So you would charge this, and this is my rate. Whatever you sign up at, we're going to keep it at this.
Yep.
And hopefully, as the program grows, I'm going to be able to add more stuff.
And then that's where you can come in. There are other people who go, well, I don't feel comfortable doing that. You're more than welcome to do that. That's where you come in with those initial opening fees and stuff like that. Because what you do is you set yourself a goal. You say, okay, how much can I manage with a limited staff? What can I do? And if you really, really care about your client, you never just shove them in a class. What you do is you take the time to talk to them because there's important information you got to know about them. If they have, for instance, a job across town and you're one of those sticklers in class, it's all about punishing people who are late, and you sign this dude up knowing damn well he's going to be late, then you're an asshole. Like, let's just be honest. Like, that guy's... You know what? Why did you sign me up then?
It's funny. My two biggest pet peeves. Pet peeve one is people just not coming to class, right? Pet peeve two is people being late. But I always say pet peeve one first because if you're going to be late, I'd rather you come to class, you know? And I used to like, I guess, punish people for being late because, like, you know, I'd make them run or do push-ups or whatever. And then I just found it to be a complete waste of time. They were still going to be late. They were still going to be late, dude. It wasn't like it was a deterrent.
So, like,
I was just like, you know what? Now, just like try not to be like when you do get here, try not to take an hour to get your wraps on.
Well, I'll
just try to go faster.
I'll give you some more free advice, like you know, like if you want your retention rates to go up, so that means you want less people to just quit or leave, right? I'll ask you a basic question, and then this is just a normal question.
Please,
you just let me know,
please.
And if you don't feel comfortable, by the way,
I'm terrible at my job.
So
I'm so horrible at my job. I feel comfortable answering anything you might want to know.
Well, I was very honest of you.
Yeah, I'm terrible at it.
So if someone's late on payment, right? This is a question that a lot of people are going to have problems with, right? How do you handle it?
So typically, we have a very large gym. We have a 13,000 square foot gym, right? And we have a significant number of. We're very lucky because we have a budget, so we have a staff, right? So typically, we will bill on the first of the month, like I think most gyms do, and then to the best of my knowledge, if that didn't go through, we will attempt to rebuild them around the 7th. We won't communicate that or anything.
It's just an automatic.
It just automatically will try to rebill on the 7th.
For sure.
Sometime after the 7th, if they come in, whoever the front desk person is supposed to say, hey, you know, just so you know, like your payment hasn't gone through. Like, did you want us to rerun that payment? And we're pretty lax about that until about the 20th or the 20th, you know, somewhere around the 20th, we start to be like, let's call them and kind of dial down where we're at on that because we don't want them to get a second. Like, we don't want them to be 2 months in before, like, now they've been charged twice and they let's say they're, $300-$400 starting to accumulate. Does that kind of answers your question?
Yeah, for sure. So, I'll give you quick advice that's literally going to put, depending on how many people.
I'll Venmo you $5.
But I'll give you some quick advice here that's going to really change your retention rates, right? First, implement 246 calls. 246 calls are really basic. If somebody hasn't shown up in 2 weeks, call them.
All right.
Like, my business model for everything I do for consulting work is give a damn about your client. So if somebody doesn't show up for 2 weeks, like, give them a call. Hey, man, Steve, I wanted to call. I noticed you hadn't been in class in like 2 weeks. We're concerned about you. I just want to make sure you're okay. Now, you might think at first, like, what the hell does that have to do with payment? But we'll get there. At 4 weeks, if they still haven't shown up in 4 weeks, now we're starting to talk about payments about to come around.
Sure.
So then I call them and I text them. Call them again. Hey, man, you know, it's been about a month. I'm really getting concerned we haven't heard from you. I just want to make sure, like, really, again, everything's okay. I'm going to go ahead and send you a text, too, just in case that works better for you instead of being on the phone.
Yeah.
And then on 6 weeks, well, now they're a month late on payment almost always. They haven't shown up in like a month and they haven't talked to you. Chances are good that payment's not going through. And so what happens is on that 6 week, call, text, email with the exact same thing. Concerned about their well-being because they've disappeared for like a month and a half. And so if you want a good way of losing a client, the first call be about money. You'll lose a client like that. As soon as you say, hey, man, I noticed you're late on your payment. Guess what? That you just showed you give 2 shits less about their actual well-being.
This is something that I try to do when it comes to, and to be honest with you, unfortunately, we don't have like an alert system. So it's one of those things where it's like I literally will be like, man, I haven't seen so-and-so in a while. And then I'll go to the front and look to see when their last check-in was and be like, oh, really? Oh, it's been like 3 weeks. And then I'll try to shoot them a message, be like, hey, man, I haven't seen you. Like, are you all right? Like, what's going on? But we don't have a system that like alerts on that. And I do try to do it, but I'm going to be honest with you. I'm sure there's someone out there listening that's like, oh, I haven't been in a month and like he hasn't texted me. I like people fall through the cracks constantly.
And that's the point of treating it like a business. So like, for instance, Rainmaker, Perfect Mind, MindBody, all these are softwares that do all that for you.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is look and go, okay, well, this is a list of people I need to call. So you don't even need staff for that.
I think this goes back to also that like there's a cost involved in that, and most martial artists they aren't operating first as a business professional, right? Because if I went to Publix, which is like the local grocery store in Florida, and I walked up and they started writing down what I had and were giving me prices, I'd be like, what kind of crap is this? Like, where did you guys come up with this, man? Where's your scanner at, dude? You know?
Exactly.
But in our industry, it's not uncommon, even in 2022, to go to a gym that has no system of check-in. You know, like, and I know that sounds maybe wild if you're watching or listening and you're not in the industry, but like it definitely exists still.
For sure. And I wanted to touch on the second part because that will help you with retention and getting your payments on time.
Please.
The second part is, what do you do if somebody's 3 payments late, 2 payments late?
Usually we cancel their membership right off whatever it is. Send them an email saying, hey, just so you know, your membership's canceled and we've written off your whatever. We don't. I will say that my company doesn't do collections. We don't. We don't like that. We don't want to get involved in that. I also hope that they come back at some point. You know, so like I don't want them to be like I have enough debt. I don't want anyone else to be in debt to something that's not.
What if I told you there's a third
real.
option? You don't have to scratch their contract and you don't have to take them to collections.
Sure, tell me.
All right, so why don't, again, we'll go with the business model, care about the client.
Yeah.
Right? So if I cared about them and I actually cared about their well-being, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to help them with that debt.
Yeah.
They still owe you.
Yeah.
So you can't live off of nothing and you can't just cancel every client that doesn't pay you on time. So the middle ground is call them and say, hey, man, I noticed that you're like 3 months late on payment. I get it. Life happens. I understand that. What we want to do is help you out because we're assuming you're having a hard time. So what we'll do is we'll actually wipe that 3 months out if you just come back in and re-sign up with us for a year. Or just give us a call and let us know what's going on, and we'll be willing to take care of it and help you out.
Yeah.
But going through and letting people know that you're willing to wipe off debt for them if they just come back for their goals, especially people like who have to have a gastric bypass and they need to lose 30 pounds. Those are people who are most likely going to have a hard time showing back up because they already had years of eating themselves to death, no exercise, and so that first couple months is going to be the hardest. But by you calling and saying, yo, man, I get it, things happen, life happens, we kind of want to help you get back on track with your goals. So what we'll do is we'll wipe that 3 months worth of payments that you owe us. Scratch. You don't owe us a dime, but we'll do that in exchange for you just coming back in, re-signing up with us for a year.
Yeah.
So you'll only owe us for your initial payment. We're not going to add any extra fees, nothing like that. And what happens is most of the time people, and obviously this is just one of those things that it's not going to happen every time for you, but imagine going from having 0 of that money to 1 month of that money, and now you got them back on track simply because you cared.
Yeah.
And so not everything in business has to be about the business. And I think that that's why people get strayed away from wanting any help or consulting work because they feel like it's going to be icky. Like nothing I said was hard selling. Nothing I said was icky. All I did was just say, give a damn about the client. And we want to do that as coaches. And so if we actually take the time to look at it from that bigger picture of like, not everything is about money. There's a reason they're not coming back. There's a reason they're not there. And we have to always put that on us. Why did my client not come back? And instead of assuming that they're not coming back because what a lot of schools do, which you're a dumbass if you do this, they go, oh, well, they're just too lazy.
Yeah.
Well, did you ever call them to see if they're okay? Did you ever call them to check in if they might have found out that their wife has cancer? Did you ever think that maybe they found out they have a debilitating disease? Did you ever call them to check to see if maybe someone died in their family? No, because you're too busy thinking about I. They're not tough enough for us. We're too good. We are too hard. No, they're people. You know, and so I think that when you start really treating it like a people business and really start to give a damn about the client first and start to look at it like, what did I do and how can I fix this? Then what happens is you stop blaming other people for them not showing up.
Yeah.
And then you wind up making more money. As a matter of fact, those ideas right there should improve your retention rate by at least 15-20%.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, I think we've been talking for quite a while. I think we'll start to wrap it up. Was there anything else that you wanted to? Obviously, the documentary is hopefully going to come out soon, but there may be some amazing opportunities with the docu-series and all this other stuff. And with those amazing opportunities, obviously comes some time to put that stuff together.
For sure.
Obviously, McDojo Life on Instagram. If someone wants to contact you about consulting, do you have a different way that they contact you, or same thing?
Nope. All through McDojo Life. Just hit me up. It's just funny because the consulting stuff I was doing before, and then I was like, well, I'll just do McDojo Life full time now. And I was happy with doing that. But then I started seeing in the comment sections people saying, I don't understand how these frauds have like hundreds of students in their seminars and I can't get people to show up to the gym. So I just started writing those people saying, I can actually help you get those people in the gym.
These people are advertising their business much better than you are.
Yeah. So like
there's frauds.
There's tricks you can do. And then of course you get people like who have that hard time of realizing that we all are white belts at something.
Yeah.
And some of us are black belts at martial arts, but we're just white belts at business. And so you don't have to be shady to be successful.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a huge, terrible human being. You don't have to do hard sales. Like if you're avoiding talking about prices with your client, it's because you haven't practiced it enough. Kind of like you might avoid side control because you prefer mount.
Yeah.
And so you're like, well, I'll rather get to mount because this is what I know. Well, that just makes you still terrible at side control. You have to put yourself in those situations to get better at them. And if you're worried about saying something about pricing with your client, think about why that is.
Yeah.
Because most likely what happens is you come off as really shady.
Yeah.
So like if someone calls you and you're like, yeah, just come on in. And they go, well, what's the price? And you don't have a problem saying, oh, well, the price is this, or you can even say something like, well, we have prices vary, but when you come in, we'd be happy to talk with you about that.
So I think what happened is that when it comes to my personal training business, my prices are listed on my website. Like you can literally see, this is what I charge. If you want one session, if you want to buy a package, this is what it costs. If you and your buddy want to work out, this is what it costs, a little bit different. I think that a lot of the literature that was produced maybe 20 years ago in our industry, in the martial arts industry, was like, you got to get them in the door before you talk prices. I hate that. I tell people all the time, like, we have prices that start at $99 a month, depending on what you're looking for. And then, go from there. Or, I want to do unlimited whatever. Okay, well, this is what we charge for unlimited, But I think that is also a matter of, like, maybe people that have the wrong information.
For sure.
Or they don't really know. Again, maybe they read something and it wasn't a great source, But, Rob, man, I appreciate you so much for coming out, dude. I know it was kind of a drive, like... but I feel like I'm very selfish, and I feel like I could keep you here for like 5 hours and I could just drain, like, give me everything you have.
I just talk shop, man. So I'd be down.
Maybe we could do another episode coming up in the future.
For sure.
And we could
I'd be
talk
happy.
more about consulting, or if you're a listener and you have some ideas or questions, maybe we could do like an Ask Me Anything in the future where we do this again. That would be super, super awesome.
I'd be happy to. Anything, man. I love talking shop. And I told you before, I'll do anybody's show that has ever asked me to do it. I answer every direct message I ever get. And when it comes to like trying to interact with people who want to interact with me, I don't think I'm that important. So like, if someone tries to contact me or wants to interact with me, I'm quite happy to do so.
No, I can only say my personal experience was that I messaged you on Instagram. I was like, hey man, do you want to do my podcast? And you were like, yes, I will do that. And I was like, okay, man, super easy. Like that was super awesome. And I'm definitely not known by anybody outside of probably Orlando. But hey, man, thank you so much, guys. Please like, comment, subscribe, share on social media. It helps more than you could ever imagine. And give us a follow. Bye, guys.